These are the best Dynasty trade targets at every position. So strap in, get ready, because we're going to be delivering some cold, hard truth today. We're going to start with the quarterbacks. Number one target on my list is J.J. McCarthy. We don't have much to go on with J.J. McCarthy, and there's a chance he misses at least part of the season due to a setback he had in his recovery, although according to reports, he shouldn't have a delay in his timeline. I mean, for starters, he might have the best young offensive-minded head coach in Kevin O'Connell, who was able to get the most out of Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold. Secondly, the weapons in Minnesota are fantastic. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and maybe an RB in the draft. Maybe. We'll see. The fear is we haven't seen J.J. McCarthy take an NFL snap yet, and this is without a doubt going to scare some Dynasty gamers off. But there were some good signs from his college production that suggest he has a good chance to be at least a capable starter in the NFL. In college, McCarthy's completion percentage increased every season. In 2021, he completed a dismal 57.6% of his passes, but in 2023, that number improved to 72.3%. McCarthy also put up back-to-back consistent, albeit not spectacular, seasons at Michigan. In 2022, McCarthy completed 64.6% of his passes, threw for 2,719 yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions. And in 2023, McCarthy completed, as we mentioned before, 72.3% of his passes for 2,991 yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions. McCarthy also provides some rushing floor. At Michigan, he rushed for 306 yards and 5 touchdowns in 2022, and as a sophomore, he rushed for 202 yards and 3 touchdowns as a junior in 2023. And I'm willing to bet that the situation and the fact that McCarthy proved to be effective at the college level are enough to propel his dynasty value going forward in the coming years. Currently, McCarthy is the quarterback 19 and player 51 according to Keep Trade Cut. This puts him in a similar range to players like Rome Odunze, Sam Laporta, Devonta Smith, Tyler Warren, and Bryce Young, and at that value, I am in on J.J. McCarthy. Next up is Jared Goff, and I get it. Jared Goff is a boring player to recommend buying in Dynasty, but that is exactly the point. Over the last 3 years, Goff has played in all 17 games in every single season, and he's finished as the quarterback 14, the quarterback 11, and the quarterback 7 in fantasy points per game. And I understand Ben Johnson is now in Chicago, and quite a few members of the Detroit Lions coaching staff are elsewhere as well, but all of the skill position players are going to be back with the team in 2025, and one starting offensive lineman is projected to hit the open market, and that's right guard Kevin Zeitler, according to prideofdetroit.com. This Detroit offense should be extremely effective next year as well. If anything, the defensive side of the ball in Detroit is going to be hurting more than the offensive side. The Lions are projected to have 5 defensive starters or key contributors hit free agency. This means the Lions are going to have to either retool defensively or be more reliant on their offense to put up points in shootouts. And Goff was also just about as good as it gets in every metric that we care about for a drop-back passer. I get it, he's not going to run around, but Goff ranked number 3 in true completion percentage, number 6 in deep ball completion percentage, number 2 in air yards per attempt, number 1 in completion percentage versus man coverage. Not great against zone. I mean, average to below average against zone. Number 23 in completion percentage versus zone, but number 5 in red zone completion percentage as well. And additionally, Goff ranked number 1 in play action completion percentage and number 1 amongst quarterbacks in clean pocket completion percentage. And those last 2 stats are very telling to me because this Lions team is going to have, yet again, one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. They're also going to have David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield yet again in 2025. This means they are going to be able to run the football, and thus defenses will have to respect the running game. In short, Goff should enjoy another successful season in 2025, even though he is losing a really good offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson. And currently, Goff is ranked as the quarterback 21 according to Keep Trade Cut. It's so disrespectful. And he's ranked around players such as Zay Flowers, Quinshon Judkins, Josh Jacobs, Luther Burden, and DJ Moore. If you need a quarterback, I would trade DJ Moore for Jared Goff in a heartbeat. Let's shift to running back, shall we? Let's talk Kenneth Walker. In 2024, Kenneth Walker played in just 11 games. He dealt with injuries to his oblique. He missed 2 games for that. Calf injury, he missed 2 games for that, and he had a sprained ankle, which he missed 2 games for that, so 6 games total. Before this season, Walker had missed just 2 total games in 2 NFL seasons, so he should be completely healthy heading into 2025, and the injury shouldn't be a concern whatsoever. The Seahawks also have a new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak, who was the New Orleans Saints offensive coordinator last season, and he also served as the offensive coordinator in 2021 under Mike Zimmer. Those are the 2 seasons that he on record where he's been an offensive coordinator calling plays. In those 2 seasons, Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook went on to have really nice seasons. In 2024, Alvin Kamara, 14 games, RB9 overall, RB5 in fantasy points per game, and in 2021, Dalvin Cook, 13 games, RB14 overall, RB5 in fantasy points per game. And there are some signs pointing in the direction that Kenneth Walker is going to be used as a true bell cow running back in 2025. The most obvious sign is his increased usage in the passing game. In 2024, Walker saw 53 targets, which ranked number 13 amongst running backs, and earned a 13.8% target share, which was number 4 amongst running backs. That is a staggering increase in usage from his 2023 season, where Walker saw just 37 targets, which ranked number 35 amongst running backs, and a 7.7 target share, which also ranked number 35 amongst running backs. The second indicator would be his snap share and opportunity share, which does account for his passing game usage as well. In 2024, Walker ranked number 12 amongst running backs in snap share at 64.3%, number 11 amongst running backs in opportunity share at 72.5%. Compare this to 2023, and Walker in 2023 saw just a 54.5% snap share, which ranked number 24 amongst running backs, and a 67.7% opportunity share, which ranked number 14 amongst running backs. And we touched on the offensive coordinator earlier, but I want to reiterate that this is likely a really good thing for Kenneth Walker, because the $1 million question is, what about Zach Charbonnet? And I would argue that Charbonnet is in trouble from a usage standpoint in this offense. Charbonnet did perform well in Walker's absence. He finished as the RB8 overall in Week 2, RB7 in Week 3, RB1 in Week 14. But as soon as Walker was healthy, Walker was the lead running back once again. And last season with the Saints, Alvin Kamara, going back to this, ranked number 7 amongst RBs in snap share at 73.1%, number 2 amongst running backs in weighted opportunities, and in 2021, Dalvin Cook ranked number 4 amongst running backs in snap share at 70.5%, and number 10 amongst running backs in weighted opportunities. The past would tell us that Kubiak is going to lean on one running back primarily, and that running back is most certainly going to be Kenneth Walker. And Kenneth Walker is also still just 24 years old at RB15 according to Keep Trade Cut. He's the player 64 overall and is currently ranked next to players such as Travis Hunter, Chris Olave, DJ Moore, and Luther Burden. And here we go with DJ Moore. I would trade DJ Moore for him in a heartbeat. Chris Olave, same story. A little bit reluctant on the rookies, but at that value overall, I'm in on Kenneth Walker. Let's talk another running back, shall we? Let's talk Chuba Hubbard. Last season did not go how the Panthers envisioned their season going. This was especially true concerning their second-round pick, Jonathan Brooks. Brooks, who was recovering from a torn ACL that he suffered during his final season at Texas, tore his ACL again late last season. In fact, it was recently reported that Brooks will likely miss most, if not all, of the 2025 NFL season, which is heartbreaking, but sometimes something shines in the darkness, which is a terrible analogy. But that something last year for the Panthers was Chuba Hubbard. In 15 games, Hubbard finished as the RB14 overall, the RB13 in fantasy points per game. Hubbard thrived with the volume he was given. Hubbard ranked number 3 amongst running backs in snap share at 77.3%, number 4 amongst running backs in opportunity share at 77.9%. Hubbard also ranked highly in targets. He ranked number 12 amongst running backs in targets with 54. Red zone touches, he ranked number 14 with 52 of those. And true yards per carry, he ranked number 12 amongst running backs. Yards created, he ranked number 14 amongst running backs. And expected fantasy points per game, he actually should have finished a little bit higher. He ranked number 7 amongst running backs in that category. Hubbard served as a true workhorse running back for Dave Canales, and in 2023, during his only other year as a play caller, serving as the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Canales propelled Rachaad White to a season where he finishes the RB22 overall and the RB23 in fantasy points per game. But the real story was that White finished number 4 amongst running backs in snap share at 77.4% and number 7 amongst running backs in opportunity share at 75.3%. So the moral of the story is once Canales finds a running back that he likes, he sticks with them and makes them the focal point of the offense. Now, the million-dollar question when it comes to Chuba Hubbard is, well, how do we know he's going to be the starting running back in Carolina in 2025? I mean, for starters, we know it's not going to be Jonathan Brooks because of the injury. The only other running backs on the roster are Miles Sanders and Raheem Blackshear, who Raheem Blackshear is a restricted free agent. And then you might ask, well, what about the NFL draft and free agency? So let's start with free agency. I mean, there are 4 free agent running backs in PFF's top 100 NFL free agents: Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, J.K. Dobbins, and Nick Chubb. And I have a hard time believing that any of these players are a serious upgrade over Chuba Hubbard in the sense that Carolina would spend the money to get one of those players. Now, I know their owner is David Tepper, so you never know. So what about the NFL draft? I mean, after all, Hubbard is a former day 3 pick in 2021, round 4, pick 21. This is unlikely for a few reasons. One, because they just drafted Jonathan Brooks and likely still have a plan for him to compete for a role at some point. Two, the Panthers currently spending a whopping 6.39% of their salary cap space on the running back position. That is more than they're spending on wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks. Miles Sanders is signed through 2026, although there is a strong possibility that he is a cut candidate because he only bears a $2.95 million dead cap hit. Jonathan Brooks was just drafted last year, and he has a contract through 2027. And the kicker is the Panthers just extended Chuba Hubbard during the middle of the season last year, extending him through the 2028 season. So my hunch is the Carolina Panthers focus their cap space, $22.5 million, and draft capital, which they do have a significant amount of draft capital, on other areas of need because there are a lot of those. And there is no doubt there's risk in acquiring Chuba Hubbard because the Panthers are, well, the Panthers. And I mentioned David Tepper earlier. They signed Miles Sanders back in the day. Nobody thought that that was a good idea, but I believe that trading for Chuba Hubbard is worth the risk. This is because of Hubbard's current value. Hubbard is currently the RB20 according to Keep Trade Cut, and the player 80 overall in their Superflex Dynasty rankings. He's currently ranked next to or around players like Shedeur Sanders, Tua Tagovailoa, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Christian McCaffrey, and Jerry Jeudy. And at that price, I'm all in. But let me know what you think in the comments. Let's go to wide receiver now, and let's talk Rome Odunze. A lot of the other rookie wide receivers had success, right? Brian Thomas Jr. is the talk of every Dynasty league, and so is Malik Neighbors. Ladd McConkey had a really good season, but those who drafted Rome Odunze ahead of Thomas Jr. and McConkey are probably feeling pretty jaded right now. And it's time to take advantage because this season could have gone much differently for Rome Odunze. When looking at some of the numbers, there's actually some good signs. For starters, Odunze ranked number 14 amongst running backs in air yards, number 11 amongst wide receivers in deep targets, and number 10 amongst wide receivers in red zone targets. So why didn't he score more fantasy points? There were a few problems that inhibited him from living up to his potential. The first of those were the target competition that he had, and we kind of knew this heading into the season that DJ Moore and Keenan Allen were going to be a problem, but they actually did turn out to be a problem. Even though Odunze was able to earn 19.2% target share, that only ranked number 49 amongst wide receivers, and this is likely due to the fact that DJ Moore finished with a 26.6% target share, which ranked number 13 amongst wide receivers, and Keenan Allen finished with a 27.2% target share, which ranked number 11 amongst wide receivers. Now, Keenan Allen is slated to be an unrestricted free agent, and it's very likely that Chicago is going to move on from him, considering they have several other needs along the offensive and defensive line. So this should free up more targets for Rome Odunze going forward. The second problem was that many of Odunze's targets were uncatchable, as the rookie wide receiver finished number 98 amongst wide receivers in catchable target rate. And this might be the scariest part of going out and acquiring Rome Odunze, because it's very possible that Caleb Williams is not what everybody thought he would be. However, I have to believe that things are going to get better for Williams because of the arrival of Ben Johnson as head coach. Now, Ben Johnson's not going to solve all of Williams' problems, but it appears as though the Bears have at least hired somebody who is qualified to coach an NFL team. It also appears as though they have hired the most qualified candidate available to develop a raw quarterback like Caleb Williams. And the Bears clearly did not set up Caleb Williams for success last season with all the chaos that surrounded him from a coaching perspective. It resulted in him having 3 offensive coordinators in his first year as a starting NFL quarterback, but that was also true for a rookie wide receiver in Rome Odunze. So having some stability at coach is going to be a good thing for Caleb Williams and, by extension, Rome Odunze as well. And thirdly, Rome Odunze wasn't utilized very well by the Bears last year, and this is evidenced by his yards per route run number. Odunze, a big, fast, physical wide receiver, ranked number 75 amongst wide receivers in yards per route run last season. He should have been running more routes down the field. They should have been taking more chances down the field, but they weren't, and they weren't utilizing one of the strengths of Rome Odunze's game, which is being a vertical threat down the field. I see that changing with Ben Johnson this year. So currently, Rome Odunze is ranked as the player number 53 according to Keep Trade Cut. This puts him in a similar range to James Cook, Travion Henderson, and a 2025 mid-first-round rookie pick, and Sam Laporta. At that price, especially a 2025 mid-first-round rookie pick, I would be willing to roll the dice on Rome Odunze. Next up is Rashee Rice. Now, Rashee Rice, I get it. Rice made one of the most boneheaded decisions a person can make, and as a result, he's likely looking at a 4 to 6 game suspension for the 2025 NFL season. Rice is also coming off of a major injury, a torn LCL. He suffered in week 4 of the NFL season, but I do believe there is a ton of upside in acquiring Rashee Rice in Dynasty. For starters, the situation is about as good as it gets. Rice has a chance to be the top wideout with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback and Andy Reid calling plays. Now, sure, we don't have a large sample size. In 2024, Rice averaged 9.7 targets, 8 receptions, 96 receiving yards, and 0.67 touchdowns per game. Through those 3 games, Rice averaged 21.6 fantasy points per game. Technically, Rice did play in 4 games during the 2024 season, but he only ran 2 routes in the 4th game. If you were to count that 4th game, as many websites are doing, Rice would have scored 16.2 fantasy points per game, which is a far cry from 21.6 fantasy points per game, which is closer to the truth. Now, I know what you're thinking, okay? We can't base our entire opinion of Rashee Rice on a 3-game sample size, and you are correct. We can't. So let's wander back to 2023 for a moment. From weeks 1 to 11 in 2023, Rashee Rice averaged a 47.5% snap share, 4.6 targets per game, and 10.2 fantasy points per game. Weeks 12 to 17, he averaged a 78.3% snap share, 9.3 targets per game, and 18.5 fantasy points per game. Now, just to put that in perspective, so that's 9 games. And the reason why we used up to week 17 was because those are the weeks that we care about in fantasy football. So over those 9 games, weeks 12 to 17 in 2023 and weeks 1 to 3 in 2024, Rashee Rice averaged just over 20 fantasy points per game. Jamar Chase, who finishes the wide receiver 1 this year, averaged 23.7 fantasy points per game in 2024. Justin Jefferson, who finished as the wide receiver 2 in fantasy football, averaged 18.7 fantasy points per game, wide receiver 3 overall in fantasy points per game. Assuming Rashee Rice recovers from the injury, which by all accounts he is, there shouldn't be a mystery as to how the Chiefs plan to use him, because we have a 9-game sample size that tells us Rashee Rice has the upside of a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football. Now tack on the fact that he will turn 25 years old this year, and I honestly don't really understand the current value. Is it risky? Sure. There's risk to acquiring Rashee Rice. It could be that all of a sudden he can't play anymore because of the torn LCL, because he doesn't recover from the injury. The Chiefs, I guess, could draft or sign somebody to come in as competition. But there's inherent risk to acquiring any player, and I would actually argue that the risks of acquiring Rashee Rice are not as significant as some people think. Currently, Rashee Rice is the wide receiver 17 according to Keep Trade Cut, and the player 48 overall. He's closely ranked to Kyron Williams, Michael Penix, Jonathan Taylor, Trevor Lawrence, and an early 2027 first-round rookie pick. And to be honest with you, I would trade Kyron Williams and Jonathan Taylor in a heartbeat to get Rashee Rice. Let me know if you think I'm crazy in the comments. We have a tight end for you, and that would be Jonnu Smith. In a world where the tight end position remains in flux, especially when it comes to figuring out who's going to finish as a top 10 tight end, who's going to finish in that weird range of tight end 6 to 12. Jonnu Smith actually feels pretty secure. This past season was by far the best season of his career. Smith finishes the tight end 4 overall and the tight end 5 in fantasy points per game, according to Player Profiler. What's even better for fantasy gamers is most of his production came during the middle to back half of the season. In fact, from weeks 11 to 17, Smith averaged 18.6 fantasy points per game. From weeks 1 to 10, Smith averaged 8.2 fantasy points per game, and clearly something clicked in the offense, and my guess is that it's sustainable going forward, especially considering there's a chance that Tyreek Hill leaves Miami in the offseason. Smith is going to turn 30 years old this season, but his athletic profile is strong and suggests he could be a productive player well into his 30s. This season, Smith ranked number 4 in targets, number 9 in target share, number 4 in yards after the catch, and number 6 in yards per route run amongst tight ends. Considering the quarterback and the coach are going to be the same next season, I like Smith as a cheap tight end buy for a win-now team. And currently, Smith is the tight end 16 and player 174 overall, according to Keep Trade Cut. He's currently ranked next to players such as Jaylen Warren, Cole Kmet, Rachaad White, and Jalen Bright. And at that price, I am all in on Jonnu Smith. Thank you for watching, and let me know who your favorite trade targets are by position in the comments. I would love to read those. And be sure to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the alarm bell until it goes ding to be alerted of new content as it's posted. And until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.